Tons of news today, but let's start with this. If you have an AMD GPU, do not turn on Anti-Lag Plus if you are playing Counter-Strike 2. It looks like AMD counter-strikes itself, pulls driver after anti-lag feature causes CS2 ban. I was seeing headlines like this, and so digging into this, it looks like we've got a bit of a problem. So here's the actual tweet from the developers of the game. Let's go ahead and read it. So it says, AMD's latest driver has made their Anti-Lag Plus feature available for CS2, which is implemented by detouring engine DLL functions. If you are an AMD customer and play CS2, do not enable Anti-Lag Plus. This does say Anti-Lag/Anti-Lag Plus. I'm curious if it's actually both of them, because Anti-Lag has been available in drivers for a long time. It's Anti-Lag Plus, that's the new one. So I'm curious on that. But anyway, it says any tampering with CS code will result in a VAC ban. Once AMD ships an update, we can do the work of identifying affected users and reversing their ban. So it does look like you can probably get the ban reversed eventually if this has happened to you, but let's be better off just not having it happen in the first place, right? So what is going on here if you're kind of out of the loop on Anti-Lag Plus? So basically, this is a lot like Nvidia's Reflex. However, Nvidia's Reflex is built into the game. It's an option in the game's graphics menu, so it's not doing anything, through the driver outside of the game itself. It looks like AMD's Anti-Lag Plus feature, which does something similar to what Reflex does to cut down on latency, well, that's switched on through AMD's driver software. And currently, the Plus version of Anti-Lag is only available on AMD's 7000 series, which is why I'm curious whether they're saying Anti-Lag and Anti-Lag Plus, if they're just being cautious here, or if it is just the Plus version. So if you switch that on, apparently, however it's doing it, it must be detouring engine DLL functions, which does get flagged as a potential cheat by Counter-Strike 2, and that's what could get you VAC banned. So basically, careful here, and hopefully AMD has a way of resolving this, because the games where cutting down on input latency are most important is online competitive games. And so if AMD implementing this through the driver level gets flagged as a potential cheat and gets you banned, that is a huge problem for the technology. And again, anti-lag's been around for a long time, and I haven't heard about this being an issue, which is why I'm curious if it's just the Plus version that this is affecting, which is new and is currently available only on AMD's 7000 series GPUs, as I mentioned earlier. Hopefully AMD is able to get around this and make it work, or maybe just start implementing it through games themselves rather than through the driver level if there's no way around this getting flagged as an issue. Anyway, I thought I'd bring that to everybody's attention first, and hopefully that all gets resolved. Other news is that apparently RTX 40 series GPUs, at least some of them, I'll get to the details in a second, will be bundled with Alan Wake 2 starting now. So Alan Wake 2 has already been announced as being a game where the PC version will feature all of the RTX features. So you get the DLSS3 and frame generation along with an extremely heavy ray tracing mode. They've been calling it, and it looks like also DLSS 3.5 ray reconstruction. Anyway, they've been calling it full ray tracing, which sounds like, more like along the lines of what we get from Cyberpunk's path traced mode. So it'll be really interesting to see what we get out of this. So as a technology that is, as a game that's designed for all of that NVIDIA technology, it does sound like this would be an interesting one to bundle with high-end 40 series GPUs. And as far as the GPUs specifically, it says it's available until November 13th, and it will be for 4070 and up. So 4070, 4070 Ti, 4080, and 4090 graphics cards, and desktop PCs or laptops with the 4090 GPU. It looks like RTX 4080 laptop, 4070 laptop from select retailers and e-tailers will receive a digital copy of the game. when released on October 27th. Anyway, so dig into the details if you're interested. And I do think that, you know, those features would be most interesting on 4070 and up class hardware. So it does kind of make sense. But anyway, it's nice to see a game bundle that I would actually be interested in personally, maybe you guys too, on Nvidia GPUs. Because lately, you know, AMD had the Starfield bundle going on for a long time, which was a big deal for a lot of people. At the same time as Nvidia had, I think it was Overwatch 2 skins and stuff, something like that. Which, you know, maybe for some people is more interesting, but I think for the majority of people, Starfield was more interesting. Well, with Starfield bundle winding down, looks like now Nvidia is offering something kind of interesting, although, again, it is only on the higher end of their lineup. Now, this is interesting. It looks like there's a new 6750 from AMD. This is the GRE version. GRE standing for Golden Rabbit Edition, and like other GRE models, like we have seen a 7900 GRE, this is a China exclusive on the do-it-yourself, you know, buy just the GPU side of things. The card itself could be available possibly to system integrators on a wider scale, like we saw from the 7900 GRE. But it's looking like the first information about this is claiming that the performance is comparable to an RTX 4060 Ti. Looks like this is still, this is a 16 gigabyte graphics card, which is, no, sorry, that's DDR4, never mind. I think this is just 12 gigabytes. I'm misreading the label right there. So yeah, this is, do we have any information on the exact specs on this thing? It's a little bit hard to say at this point. I'm trying to dig through the article to see if we do. But it says a brief examination of MSI Systems reveals that the RX 67 GRE will be priced only slightly higher than the 4060 non-Ti, with an increase of approximately 2% to 4%, which can be considered marginal. Furthermore, the new GRE model is expected to be approximately 7% to 4% more affordable than the 6750 XT. So it's looking like the price should be lower, at least in these bundled systems, than the 6750 XT version. Seems pretty interesting, but again, I'm trying to figure out if we have... Okay, it does say 12 gigabytes right here. So 6750 GRE does appear to be a 12 gigabyte card, like the 6750. But again, it doesn't appear to be any actual reviews of these things at any point. So again, MSI nor Gigabyte have officially confirmed precise specifications of the new model. So anyway, it does seem like it would probably be less powerful than the 6750 XT version. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens when we get actual reviews and the like. Anyway, I did mention Starfield earlier. Intel's Arc GPUs have been a bit of a disaster in this game up to this point. Intel did release a driver on October 10th, boosting Starfield performance by claiming up to 149% and adding support for the Arc 580. I have not been able to test this myself, and 149% of a very low number is still a pretty bad performance, so I'm curious what the actual overall performance of Intel Arc GPUs are in this game, and I'm sure at some point I will get around to that. Speaking of the A580, there have been a few reviews out for it. I've never been sent review samples by Intel, nor have they ever reached out to me. So at this point, if I'm going to review a 580, I will have to just eventually buy one myself. Hardware Unboxed does have a detailed review up against the RX 6600 and RTX 3050, showing at 1440p, the A580 on a 12-game average is between the performance of the 6600 and the 3050. And again, in the 1080p results, it's a little bit closer to the 3050 and a bit more slower than the 6600. Now, that average is including Starfield, which performed very poorly. However, the Gamers Nexus review did apparently get their card a bit late, which allowed them to use the updated drivers that did have some increased Starfield performance. Although if you go through their review, it does still look like low performance in Starfield overall. The Gamers Nexus review highlights something that, again, other reviews are also noticing, which is if you look at total system power draw, that's one of the main downsides to the card. with it drawing a lot of power compared to cards like the 6600. 218 watts versus 136 watts, and the 3050 coming in at 134 watts. Again, considering the fact that it is losing to those cards in performance, and if we want to look at another review of performance, if you look at the Tech Power Up review, you can see how it stacks up against a lot of other cards, where at 1080p in their set of games they tested, they have the 580 almost tied with the RX 6600, and ahead of the 3050, with the 3050 only reaching 80% of the performance of the 580. But if you jump into their 1440p results, we do see that they actually had the A580 ahead of the RX 6600, with the 6600 reaching 94% of the performance of the 580. So again, it looks like if you compare that to the hardware unboxed results, again, it looks like, as is often the case with Intel GPUs, the performance really comes down to which games you test. Because in a lot of times in DX12 games, the A580 does well, especially at 1440p. But if you pick the wrong game that the drivers just aren't optimized for, or if you go into older games, which have gotten a lot better through driver updates, but you can still find certain ones that aren't working really well, it's still kind of hit or miss. So that's kind of the issue overall here. Also, with the $180 launch price, and we saw the A750 dipping as low as $190 recently, they've got it about 12% ahead in this chart at 1440p, or the A750 about 9% ahead at 1080p. So if you're in that 10% faster range, if the prices are pretty close, the A750 does seem like the better deal, but the A750 is usually a larger price gap from there. It's usually closer to the, the $230, $240 price range, in which case the A580 does make a bit more sense. But if you could spring for an RX 6600, which more consistent drivers, across more games, I think generally that would still be my recommendation if they're within $10 or $20 of each other, which is often the case. Anyway, I'd like to get my own full review out on one of these at some point, but I will have to buy one and have time to do the review and all of that. But anyway, at some point I will get my own data on that. But overall, it doesn't seem like it's really completely shaken up the market in the price range, although it does seem decently priced. But again, when the A750 is low or the 6600 is low enough, I'd probably go that route. Anyway. How about Fluid Motion Frames at the driver level? I had tested this out a whole bunch. Hardware Unboxed seems to be the first major review of this I've seen, with a lot more detailed side-by-side analysis compared to what I was able to offer in my videos. Although it seems like the overall conclusion, and again, all my sources will be linked in the video description, was similar to my own, which is, it has so many drawbacks. I really have not been able to find a game where I feel like turning it on is better than turning it off. However, your results may vary in different games. And again, it is a preview technology, so perhaps it will improve over time. I highly recommend the Hardware Unboxed review of the driver level Fluid Motion Frames, which again, you still need a preview driver for. They're not fully released. But support for the 6000 series of GPUs was added a while ago. I've already done videos on this topic. Anyway, just wanted to kind of confirm. I'll let you guys know that this detailed image quality analysis is now available from Hardware Unboxed, but overall conclusion did seem to confirm what I had been feeling myself in my own testing, which is generally if on fast motion it turns off, which is when you'd most want the increased motion smoothness, and if the quality of the frames aren't as good as frame generation built into games like FSR3, then and the frame pacing has issues as well, it's not really doing its job of smoothing out the visuals of the game. So I'd probably rather leave it off personally, but I'm hopeful to see if maybe the technology will improve. Now, speaking of frame generation technologies, this is weird, and I think I want to find the time to test this out for myself. We're seeing reports of enabling DLSS3 frame generation on RTX 20 or 30 series GPUs, but only in Portal Prelude RTX. Now, I have not been able to try this to verify it for myself yet. What is going on here? Well, I saw this WCCF Tech article and I dug into it, and apparently there is a YouTube video showing this off, But the main problem is that the frame pacing looks terrible. So, and again, this is apparently enabling, you saw the button check there, enabling the frame generation. And if you do look at the stats and whatnot, it apparently seems to be working, but the frame pacing did seem pretty bad and all that. I want to explore this for myself when I get the chance, but the point is, if you can enable it, that's really interesting. Again, they just kicked it back on and frame times went down, so it does seem to be doing something. But look at, are you guys seeing the crazy stuttering? So it's clearly not working correctly. Now, what does that mean overall? First of all, if I'm able to confirm that this isn't just like a complete fake or something, I really haven't had a lot of time to look into this. But if it is actually being able to be enabled, does that mean that through, drivers work, Nvidia could get a functioning version of this that does frame pace correctly on 20 and 30 series GPUs? They do have optical flow accelerators. The claimed reason from Nvidia why this is a 4000 series exclusive is that the 4000 series got a major boost to its optical flow acceleration, and maybe, and they've claimed the 20 and 30 series GPUs just don't have that same level of optical flow acceleration to achieve a good result. The result here certainly looks bad from a frame pacing standpoint, but is it just that it's not driver support? Like, could they tweak that and get the frame pacing actually working? Question mark. I don't know. But I am very curious about this, and I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention, and it is something I would like to test out. But let's move on to other topics. Intel's Core i9-14900K gaming performance has apparently been leaked, and the report is that it is faster than the 7950X3D, but only by a very small amount. And the performance claims are coming from a leaked but claiming to be official Intel slide, so not from a third-party review, which means that this would likely be painting the 14900K in the best light possible. And if the best light possible brings it only 2% ahead of the 7950X3D, that's certainly not a major win. Here's the overall slide that we're apparently seeing, where you can see the game-by-game results. This is not in English, and you can see the performance versus the 7950X3D. So above this line is a win for the Intel chip. Below that line is a loss. If you look at the overall translated results that we see here, you can see the performance of the 14900K versus 7950X3D, and you can see that the vast majority of the tested games are within a 6% margin plus or minus, meaning in most games there's not a big difference. In games like Dota 2 and Fortnite, there's a more noticeable loss, a bit of a loss in Cyberpunk as well. But in some games, there's a more noticeable win, like maybe CSGO, which doesn't exist anymore. Ashes of the Singularity, Total War Warhammer 3, Starfield, and Metro Exodus, where it's a larger bump. But again, if in Intel's chosen set of games, it's a 2% margin, which would be a tie. That's showing that I wouldn't expect the 14th gen to be eclipsing AMD's current GPUs. And in some games, the 7800X3D outperforms the 7950X3D due to, CCD scheduling issues and latency between them and things like that. So anyway, interesting stuff. But yeah, nothing sounding like something to get too excited about. And also, it sounds like Intel's 15th generation may also not be something to get too excited about from a gaming performance perspective if this leak ends up being true. I'm seeing reported at videocards.com that Intel's next generation Arrow Lake X CPUs are only targeting a 5% single-thread performance uplift. Now, a larger 15% multi-thread performance gain, but in gaming, it's the single thread where you get more gain. Now, it's true that if the cache increases, like we've seen with AMD's 3D V-cache parts, that you can get a larger performance gain than just your single thread boost. but the single thread performance uplift of 5% is not a lot. And again, this is apparently Arrow Lake, not the Raptor Lake refresh, which we're seeing here that should be coming out within the next couple of days. It's the... Now, where is this coming from? So this is a slide apparently leaked by Uzi38 with most of the with a lot of the interesting information crossed out. However, you can see that it is Arrow Lake S, and it does say up to 1.15 multi-threading, so there's your 15% multi-threading and 1.05 single-threading performance gain with new performance and efficient cores. It also has a mention of a new Battlemage 1 discrete graphics card, which is interesting, and I'd like to hear more about that. However, again, if the 14th gen is only a tiny single-digit percentage boost over the 13th gen from a small clock speed bump in gaming, certain chips will get more efficiency cores and have a bigger multi-threading bump. But then we see the next-gen Arrow Lake, only 5% boost from there. I'm a little bit worried about the type of performance bump we could be seeing from Intel's gaming over the next chunk. So again, currently we have the 13th gen Alder Lake, then we have the Raptor, we have Alder Lake 12th gen, we have, I lose track of all the namings, but yeah, Raptor Lake, and then the refresh for Raptor Lake coming now. Arrow Lake would be 2024. Anyway, it's all a leak though. Could this be nonsense? Who knows? But it does have me a little bit worried. In other CPU news, we do see AMD's Threadripper Pro 7000 WX CPU specs leaking to WCCF Tech. So again, leaks, not official. Apparently the flagship would be 96 cores over 5 gigahertz clocks at 350 watts. Now this is not really a gaming part, so I don't want to focus too much on this since my channel is more gaming focused. However, the videocards.com follow-up does kind of outline what we would see from that whole lineup and all of those parts and all that, if you are curious. But let's go ahead and move on. We see Galax releasing an RTX 4090 20th Anniversary Edition with a hidden power connector. The design looks like this, and it does seem to have an acrylic screen with the power connector hidden underneath. This does seem to be a trend now in GPU design. We're seeing colorful launching RTX 4060 and 4060 Ti iGame Ultra Z series with hidden power connectors. Again, reported by videocards.com here. And again, power connectors hidden in the back here underneath a plate. So yeah, it seems to be a new trend in the GPU design to hide the power cables. Now, I would like the next thing I'd really like to focus on is testing out Lords of the Fallen as a new big Unreal Engine 5 release. However, we had seen rumors that this would be the next game to feature both DLSS3 and FSR3 at launch. We even saw screenshots like this coming from a stream by, I think it was Lyric, where it does show FSR3, however, it does not show an FSR3 frame generation button, and keep in mind that the frame generation is not the same thing as the upscaling, and there is still an upscaling FSR3. And I now have the game, I've downloaded it, and this is my screenshot from the actual release build of the game, and this is what the graphics menu looks like for me. I see FSR, but not listed as FSR3, and I just see upscaling options. I do not see a frame generation option. So it does not look like Lords of the Fallen has FSR3 frame generation from what I see in the graphics menu. However, this is literally as far as I've made it in the game. I got past the intro movie, which had a lot of Dark Souls vibes, not a surprise given the game's obviously heavily Dark Souls influenced. And then I opened the graphics menu to take this screenshot. Now I'm filming this video, and hopefully tonight and tomorrow I can actually test this game, and if the performance seems interesting, do a video about it. Unreal Engine 5 is a big deal, so I'm definitely going to be wanting to take a look at how we're doing here. Anyway, in other big news, we're seeing Microsoft announcing that Activision Blizzard and King have now actually joined Xbox. So they are under the Xbox umbrella now. If you're interested on when will we get Game Pass games from those major studios with Activision and Blizzard and all that. It's looking like they're saying that they are working on that. So they say, today we start the work to bring beloved Activision Blizzard and King franchises to Game Pass and other platforms. We'll share more about when you can expect to play in the coming months. So they're going to share more in the coming months. So I would expect early 2024 then, if I'm reading into that, before we'd actually get those. So if you're expecting the late, just to suddenly get access to every Activision Blizzard game on Game Pass, it's looking like not quite yet. I am curious how much we will see. In PlayStation 5 news, we did on October 10th get the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Slim. So smaller PS5 design comes with 1 terabyte storage for PS5 and PS5 Digital Edition. New model provides option to add an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc drive to PS5 Digital Edition. And I think that was pretty much what I had for you guys today. Like I said, I'm going to be hopping into some Lords of the Fallen benchmarking. I was hoping to test out FSR3 in another game. But like I said, according to the graphics menu that I had, it looks like that will not be something I'll be able to bring for you guys. But still, Unreal Engine 5 performance is pretty interesting. And I hope all of you have an excellent day.